Echoing Al White's notorious introduction, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Emmanuel Dupuis, president of Aero Asset, and very honored to be hosting this virtual town hall. Thank you, Louisa, Al, and the Heli Investor team for organizing the industry's leading conference. Tried and true, steadfast, benevolent, as sure as rotor is rotor. And I'm now delighted to introduce one of four guests. He is renowned for making his own saucisson and boudin noir. He's VP sales at Aero Asset. William Sturm, how are you?
Hey, Emmanuel. It's great to be back with you for another Heli Investor Town Hall. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and it's great to see you as well. I know we talk several times a day, but I look forward to seeing you in person very soon.
Yeah, I do too. I really look forward to seeing you, the team, and everyone who's attending European Rotors in Cologne and Heli Investor in December on the 1st and 2nd. It's really going to be great to be back together again.
It really sure will. And in the meantime, could you give us a rundown of the twin engine pre-owned market performance year to date?
Yeah, of course. And for new viewers out there, Aero Asset produces a quarterly pre-owned report called Heli Market Trends. It covers twin engine models that are in production and variants with recent pre-owned sales activity. It reports on retail sales, supply, and absorption rate, which are really great indicators of the health of specific market segments. So let's start running through the KPIs we use to track the market. If you could please put up our first slide. So year to date, as you can see, twin engine retail transaction volume has remained stable compared to the same time period in 2020. We're actually right now just shy of 100 transactions. Again, these are retail transactions. Supply of twin engine helicopters for sale has dipped about a quarter year over year. However, the deal pipeline, and that's the number of deals pending at various stages of transactions, that's cooled roughly 25% since Q2 of this year, but it's up about the same amount, or 23% compared to Q3 of 2020. So with the overall pre-owned twin engine market absorption rate is standing at about 1.5 years. And what's encouraging is that's about 20% better than it was between Q1 and Q3 of 2020. And we can actually move on to the next slide when you have a chance, because I'm excited to tell you about another KPI that we at Aero Asset are now featuring in our Heli Market Trends section of in Heli Market Trends, and this is a Heli Flight Trends report, part of the report. So this section tracks global flight activity of all helicopters equipped with ADS-B transponders. So to take a closer look at the number of worldwide helicopter flights, the number of worldwide helicopter flights experienced a sharp rebound in Q1 of 2021, and it's continued year to date. North America saw just north of 250,000 flights in Q3 2021. That's about a 30% increase year on year. Europe, in second place, was just shy of 200,000 flights in Q3, and that's about a 23% increase so far this year. Please stay tuned to the HMT as this section will advance in upcoming editions.
That's really great, Will. Thank you. And what markets are showing the most activity?
In terms of volume, we're still seeing the majority of the transactions in the light twin segment, but really the amazing thing that we've noticed is the medium twin engine segment has seen a 43% increase in transactions compared to the same time period last year.
Why is supply decreasing?
At the moment, I think there's a lot of aircraft that are being returned to service, and that's resulting in a notable decrease in supply. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that trend will evolve over the next coming quarters.
Great. And what twin engine markets are performing best?
Well, I'll refer you to our next slide, which you know well as the liquidity lineup. you can view this the liquidity lineup and the rest of the Q3 heli market trends by going to arrowasset.com/report. But the markets that are really still moving the most are the H145s and the 109 SSPs. Those are the best performing in Q3 of this year. But notably, the S76 C plus and C++ market has been very active in 2021. It's actually the first time we've seen it make it into the top 3 of the lineup.
That's incredible. And yeah, I mean, what does the breakdown of C plus, C++ sales look like year to date?
So there were 17 transactions in total, 7 out of 7 in VIP configuration, 10 utility. The majority of 15 of those coming from North America, 1 in Asia, and 1 in Europe.
That's incredible. Really good to see that market bouncing back in action. Back to the pre-owned twin engine market. So where are the majority of buyers coming from?
The first part of 2021, we saw the majority coming out of Europe, but North American buyers are back, and they're accounting for about just over a third of total transactions year to date. Of those transactions, VIP sales volume is up about 10% compared to the same time period last year, whereas EMS configured machines transaction with that configuration has started to slow down a little bit.
Right. Thanks. That's really really eye-opening. And any predictions for the rest of the year and beyond?
I think that 2021 is going to close out on a great note. Like I said earlier, the deal pipeline is encouraging, and looking forward to a real strong Q4. And I'm bullish for 2022. So let's stay tuned.
That's great. That actually reminds me, didn't you close a lightning speed deal in a previous Q4?
Yeah, I think it was December 17th, and I got a phone call, and from phone call to rolling the helicopter onto an Antonov with wet ink on the documents was 4 days. So I hope to see some more of those soon. Yeah, that was a super VVIP deal, and I think we're gonna see some more of those in Q4. And the VIP segment's gonna remain strong.
Okay, great. Well, Will, thank you very much for this presentation. That's really fantastic.
Thanks, man. Good to see you. Good. Thanks to everybody. Al, Luis, everybody. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you. That was William Sturm with Arrow Asset. We were supposed to have Joe Carfagna on at this stage, but I think he's running a little bit late. So maybe we bring on Sebastian from Milestone. Sebastian Moulin,
Hi,
how are you?
Very good. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you and see you 5 on 5. So absolutely perfect.
Okay, great.
And
Some
very
technical issues.
Yes, and very, very glad to see you as well. Sebastian, I think we started in aviation at a very similar time, around 2004 or 2005, and you started out with Airbus helicopters in Marignane, and followed by postings in Asia, I believe. And you were then appointed Western Europe sales manager at Bell Helicopters before joining Milestone in 2015. You've been part of Milestone for 6.5 years now. How has the Milestone helicopter portfolio evolved since you joined, and particularly over the last couple of years?
Thanks, Emmanuel. Thanks first for having me, and thanks to the whole team, obviously, for organizing this. That's a great opportunity for us to speak to the market and speak to you, obviously. Look, I think as you said, we started at the same time. We've seen a lot of things happening in this market, and the last 2 years have not been any different, and even probably with some greater challenges given the COVID-19 and everything else. But I think, look, in general, what we see, what we have seen is that the fundamentals of our portfolio have been holding, and look, the asset class the helicopter and generally speaking, our fleet have been, very resilient. The operators first have been very resilient despite the crisis and all the COVID-19 pandemics that they had to manage. And I think, look, with 60% of our portfolio serving oil and gas, we've seen and we continue to see the importance of the service they provide, right? And the impact that it has on every day. The energy supply is a key factor of our economy and a major focus for a lot of governments and everyone. And the helicopters keeping flying for those oil platform and offshore oil and gas has been definitely very important and a key aspect for our fleet. The other 40% of our fleet is mainly supporting, EMS, search and rescue, parapublic missions in general, and that again has been, a very resilient segment. All or most of those contracts are supported by government backed contract, so there is no way to stop the service. You've got to keep flying. You've got to continue adapting, and that's what they have been doing. And the flight hours, I think, as we have seen in the previous slides, have been just going back up to even greater levels. So we are fairly happy and confident with the level of service that is being provided. We have continued diversifying our portfolio. That has been a main focus. I think back in 2015 we were at 85% oil and gas exposure. As I said, today it's a 60-40%, more or less, and I think, look, we've seen some new diversification this year. With one good example is the partnership we signed with the Quark Expeditions, where we have 2 145s going into the new ship Ultramarine that is going to do expeditions in the polar region. So that's clearly new to us, and the team has been great at putting a lease in place with aircraft on a ship that are going to go across the world, change of jurisdictions and all this. So it was a challenge, but certainly something that we've been very keen on supporting. And I think, look, some of the aspects we've been focusing more recently is also on our main segment, the oil and gas, and making sure we were supporting our key customers like CHE and Babcock in the acquisition. That was a step that where they needed our support, and we were keen and very happy to support them. And we've also been buying some S92s on the market because we could get them at incredible value and real discount, and we still believe that the platform itself is serving an important part of the helicopter supply, and it's key for us and we could see a great value in this.
Great. And talking about the S92, and are you obviously you have an enormous S92 fleet. I think probably the biggest S92 fleet in the world, which makes you the most prevalent player in the S92 world. Are you also looking at other heavy types like the 525, for example? Is that on your has been on your radar or still on your radar?
I think we'll touch on some of the demand, but look, clearly we have been looking at the 525. There is no questions. Right now, the appetite for new heavies or new super medium is not there, right? So let's be honest. We have to focus on the existing fleet and the existing oil supply on the market. So, but in terms of technology itself, definitely we have to keep looking at all technologies, and we're speaking to all the OEMs.
Right. Yeah, and it seems the last 2 years, with the pandemic, have not helped curing the oversupply in the oil and gas market. I mean, how has the operating lease market been affected by COVID, if at all?
Yeah, well, look, I think as you said, right, over the last 6 years, we've been dealing with a lot of challenges, right? The oil crisis back in 2015, and the COVID-19 over the last year and a half or so, and look, we're getting used to it, unfortunately, I should say. So this and the volatility of the market. So the impact of COVID in general, although we were at the start unsure about the potential impact, I think we've been positively surprised. As I said earlier, it's just there was a bit of delay in some of the project, but right now, I mean, what we are seeing is a lot more demand. We're seeing, the oil price at $85 a barrel, and we're starting to place some incremental aircraft, in particular Australia. We are having discussions with, some project in Brazil. So yeah, I think the market has been adjusting fairly well, and I can see more like of a positive aspect coming out of this from now on.
Yeah. So I mean, like everyone, I'm sure you experienced just horrendous logistical issues in the last couple of years, trying to accomplish missions and procure aircraft on different parts of the world. And as the world negotiates itself out of these COVID measures, I mean, how do you see demand for lease progressing? Sort of medium term.
Yeah. Look, it's a good point, right? I think that the lease itself, the lease solutions and operating lease have proven to be the right solution in many cases for the customers and for our operators. I think everyone realized that it's hard to allocate, the capital into this space, and getting an operating lease is definitely a better solution. Less equity will be required from the operators, and you can match your underlying contract terms. And I think we've all seen the risk of residual value is real in our industry. We've all learned a lot of lessons over the last few years. So I think, from an operator point of view, having the right balance of, aircraft you own and aircraft on operating lease has proven to be the right solution. So we're quite, confident about this, and we definitely see, more demand coming from the market in terms of solutions. Then the rest would be, driven by, some of the project, as we said earlier. Like, it depends on the segments. For sure we see some, oil explorations potentially bringing like new project and dealing with some of the oversupply we just mentioned. And we see also like, demands coming from, new regions and different segments. So, we've placed recently a 145 in Oman. I think that was the first of type in these regions. We've also signed a deal for more 139s to go into Malaysia. We had like a new 169 financing PLB for NHV into the North Sea, and even some SAR SNA2 placement in Norway. So I think in terms of, variety of missions, regions, and operators, we are quite confident that we will continue to see a strong demand from the market. And look, not only we provide financing, helicopter financing, but I think we focus very much on providing like a full service. We've done entry into service packages, financing, training, toolings. So anything our operators need, I think we have a strong team that likes to go into the details and trying to cover all those aspects.
That's great. I mean, so do you see appetite for new heavy helicopter supply in the next 12 or 18 months, or I mean, is that completely off the radar?
Yeah, I think, look, in short, that's what I said earlier. No, right? At this stage, really, look, there is no doubt in anyone's mind that the oversupply is still there. There are a number of, S92s available still on the ground that we would like to see going back to service. And that's what we are monitoring very closely. We're looking at, the entire fleet of heavies and super mediums, the flight hours, and we need to see like more project coming up and deploying those aircraft before doing anything. One thing we do though is continue investing in our own fleet, because that's one aspect that very often people tend to forget. But having them ready for deployment with the right equipment, whether it's TCAS2, the right HF for Australia, or some of the other funky requirements from our dear end users, that needs a lot of investment, and that's what we do, right? All our fleet is ready to go. I mean, we always have aircraft ready to go, and with PBH as well. So that, I think, that creates a real value and difference for the market.
Great. And addressing the elephant in the room, which is the Milestone's sale and AerCap's acquisition. I understand you can't comment much on this whole subject, and so I appreciate your position. But how does that change, if at all, Milestone's perspective in the and I think somewhat you've already answered the question, but I just wanted to address this real quick. How does it change Milestone's perspective looking forward?
Yeah, look, I think as you said, there's not much I can comment on AerCap. I think look at this, the transaction is due to close before end of the year, and we'll have to see once it's closed. But as of today, as you just said, right, given the market, I think we've continued deploying capital where it makes sense. I think that has been the motto for us. It's really to apply the discipline and the lessons learned over the last few years. We've done some PRBs this year. There is actually like a bunch of PRBs that we will be closing over the next few weeks. Some are in EMS, some are in SAR missions. We're looking at some other initiatives or opportunities. So I would say right now we are quite bullish on the market and trying to continue and staying active where it makes sense. And look, moving forward, we all know that the move towards sustainable energy is going to play a role. That could get some more requirements for helicopters, for wind farm, for instance, that we've been supporting already with a number of aircraft. And as we said, there is the oil and gas, and also anything outside of oil and gas. We've seen a lot of new missions coming up for requirements, for military training. We have some very good discussions right now with some operators that are looking at supporting governments. Certainly a lot of good projects and exciting time ahead. So we're here to stay.
Great. And I think we've somewhat touched on this already indirectly, but what about new appetite for new aircraft in the medium term? What do you think? You see lessors starting to ramp up purchases for new assets?
Look, from our perspective, we've definitely continued, investing. Right? I think we were the first lessor to take some orders for the 160, and that's mainly because we can see that this aircraft is going to bring a multi-mission role. The ability to go serve EMS or oil and gas. So that sort of fits the bill of what we are looking at from a fleet investment perspective. So yeah, no doubt that I think we will be investing more in the future. But again, that doesn't take away the discipline that needs to be applied. I think from the residual value management, from the reconfigurations, from all the transitions costs in general, those are the aspects that we are looking at a lot more in details, I should say, compared to probably the early days of Milestone. And before committing on any product, any platform, we want to make sure that that's not going to hit us 5 years down the line, because that's what is at stake, right? We invest for platforms that have been that have to have the ability to be redeployed for 20, 25 years on different missions. If not, it's just not a leasable asset.
Right. Okay. Well, last question, Sebastian. Is Milestone looking at the eVTOL market? Are you tracking what's going on in that market, or is that too on the edge for you guys?
Well, generally speaking, it's hard to not look at it, right? With so many announcements everywhere and,
right,
and a lot of money being poured into this segment. So yeah, do we look at it? Of course, we are. We are monitoring the what's going on in the market. We are speaking to the OEMs. We're also speaking to some of the operators that could be tomorrow the potential next operators of those products. We had discussions with Blade today to see if we can support them with some of our aircraft. But I think it is very early days. All the fundamentals I just discussed before, I just mentioned to you before, they cannot be there for eVTOLs at this stage, right? So we have no idea of what's the right technology, and all those, RV aspects and everything else. So I think, are we excited about it? Definitely. It looks pretty cool. Are we ready to invest a lot of money into them? It's a little bit early.
All right. Great. Well, Sebastian, I really appreciate all your feedback. Sebastian Moulin from Milestone, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks,
Great
everyone.
to see you.
Great to see you.
We often focus on the twin market, but there's a lot happening in the world of single engines as well, and to give us a view on the single engine market, but not only. I'm now delighted to introduce Larry Roberts, president of Copter AG, president of Copter North America, Leonardo company. Larry, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. I'd like to warn you that I'm in a home office, so I've got a chocolate lab running around in here. My neighbor decided to cut the yard, so I do the best I can.
Well, it's great to see you, and we can see you and hear you perfectly, so that's fantastic. And Larry, before you worked for major OEMs, you worked in law enforcement as an agency pilot, SWAT sniper, hostage negotiator, criminal investigation captain in narcotics and organized crime. Was the transition to a desk job challenging?
No, not really. Once I got into the aviation sector and got it going in the department, I was flying quite regularly. So my time in the office was not very much. Even though I was working narcotics and working homicide, I still had the responsibility to fly in the agency, and we flew a lot to different parts of the state. So I stayed in the saddle pretty good amount of time. And then when I left my home department, I would call, and I went to work for a sheriff's office in Central Florida. Then I was responsible for aviation all the time, and I had the privilege of flying a number of aircraft all the time. So I stayed in the saddle.
Right. So after a career in law enforcement, you joined Airbus Inc. as VP in charge of sales and customer support, and then in 2010 you were hired by Bell Helicopters as SVP in charge of commercial helicopter programs and global commercial sales and marketing. And then in 2017, you became SVP of Copter Group AG and then president of Copter North America. What single engine market trends are you seeing in the law, EMS, oil and gas segments?
Well, I think what the operators are wanting in the single engine market sector is they're wanting to see some new technology. If you look at what's available in the market today, it's been available in the market for quite some time. And it has not been, a lot of the newer machines today have not been responsible or been made to adapt to the stricter regulations that we have today. So, helicopters like the one that we've produced and sell, the AW09, now have to commit themselves and be responsible for meeting those new standards, which are, new standards, and they carry higher safety ratings. So I think the OEMs are looking at single engine helicopters and want new technology. They want to see that sprout and be able to take the place of some twin engine helicopters and take, in some cases, even the place of some medium twin engine helicopters. But it's all a matter of balance with the operators. Some missions for singles, some missions for twins, but in general, the interest in general is all there.
Great. And so how does the AW109 fit within these markets?
Well, and when I was at Bell, we did a survey, and our survey basically said 65% of the respondents told us that they'd like to have a twin engine cabin class helicopter with a single engine acquisition and operating cost. And that's the story behind the AW09. We want to give our customers the ability to do everything you can do with a 135 or a 145, but at the same time do that at the acquisition price of 407 or 130, and for that matter, the same operating cost. So when you start looking at those financial numbers, they start making a lot of sense. When you can offer an operator who's been used to a 135 the same cabin, more or less, but for significantly less money, from the acquisition side, from the lease side, and certainly from the cost side.
Right. And I mean, Airbus have dropped the H120 to concentrate on the more powerful and versatile H125 and H130 T2. Bell are doing extremely well with the fourth generation Bell 407 GXI. Leonardo are still producing the very powerful 119KX. I mean, how does the AW109 fare in this lineup of very serious players and competitors?
Well, I think that some of the things that our new owners have always maintained very close and very tight is they understand that you cannot give a pilot too much power, you cannot give a pilot too much range, and you cannot give a pilot too much speed. So you can expect that the AW09 will hold its own with anything out there that's in the light twin market, certainly in the single engine market. It'll far exceed, I think, the expectations that folks that are used to flying those type of machines have.
Right. I mean, will it replace the KX?
No, I think it's a different type of market, quite frankly. I think it's more, the KX has his own niche, and the AW9 will be, I think, a wider swath, having the capability of replace light twins.
Okay. And have you flown or in the AW09?
No, sir, I have not. All the flights that the aircraft has done so far has just been flight tests. Right. I'm not essential personnel, so I just had the ability to watch it and ooh and ah, but I haven't been in it yet. I look forward to it, though.
I imagine, yeah. And can you give us an update on certification?
Well, I can give you an update on what we're doing today, and that is that the helicopter is in Switzerland. It's flying a more aggressive flight schedule. We have, as anything happens in production, flight testing changes as we go forward. You find different things that have to change. You'll see that with the AW09. But I think that we're all looking forward somewhere in the 2024 time range to be able to come to market and start actually selling aircraft.
So, and please excuse my ignorance, but do you have and maybe this was published or I don't know, maybe this is completely confidential, but do you have a sense of where the price point is going to be on the AW09 for a standard equipped, list price aircraft?
Yeah, I can tell you that it'll be competitive with the 407, with the 130, and with the H125. It'll be competitive with all three aircraft.
Okay. So if you had sort of say between $3 and $4 million to spend, which one would you buy?
Well, if I wanted a helicopter that had 198 gallons of gas, that had a big old cabin that I could put a lot of stuff in, could fly me wherever I wanted to go at 140 knots and a comfortable, smooth ride, and I could buy it for that relative same price range and have met new safety standards that have been put into the industry, if you would. I think I'd select the AW09.
Great. So, and I don't know, maybe this isn't in the works. I'm not sure if Leonardo is already working on a pilotless version of the AW09, but do you see pilotless a single engine helicopter serving mission critical roles in the next 5-10 years?
Yes, I think a lot of that is possible, and you'll see a lot of change in the coming years.
Interesting. So, do you also see an application for a strong application for VIP AW09?
I think it'll take its fair share. Again, having that big cabin is very important to VIP customers. So you'll have a nice big cabin for all the imagination that you want to put into the cabin as you travel.
Right. So do you prefer selling helicopters, new ones, or do you prefer being a criminal investigator?
Well, let me tell you something. They're both very rewarding. I had a great time solving some major cases where I lived, and I happened to be a participant in the Gainesville student murders, where a serial killer was wreaking havoc in our town. And it was very rewarding getting that guy caught. But I have to say that working in the helicopter industry has been the highlight of my life.
Well, Larry, I really appreciate all your inputs. It's been a real pleasure and honor to speak with you, sir. So thank you very much for coming in. Larry Roberts, President of Copter North America. Thank you very much.
And thank you, and thanks to my good friend Sebastian Boulon, who is a gentleman.
Yes, I understand you you used to work with him at Bell.
He's a very good guy.
Great. Well, great to see you. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
So my next guest, is Joe Carfagna Jr., President of Leading Edge Aviation Solutions and International Aircraft Dealer Association Board Chairman in 2020 and 2021. Joe, good to see you. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine, Emmanuel. It's nice to be here.
Great to see you. So, Joe, back in, I wanted to bring you in because the VIP segment of the helicopter market is doing well, and back in 2008, and I wanted to talk about the correlation between the VIP segment of the helicopter market and the business jet market. And so back in 2008, if you can believe that was 13 years ago, I was representing a buyer and you, the seller of a pre-owned Falcon 2000 business jet. And we closed the transaction a few months before the aviation market and aircraft values unraveled in the wake of the financial crisis. This was a mid $20 million transaction, and the buyer was paying in excess of OEM list price for a pre-owned 4-year-old airframe. So, Joe, the pre-owned business jet market has been performing on hyperdrive for slightly over 12 months now. Are you seeing excessive pricing similar to 2008? And please update us on the business jet market in terms of supply and demand.
Well, I think it will sound different from what you've heard for the last 45 minutes or so. It's different than 2008. It's a stronger market than 2008. And it's driven by factors that are just almost the perfect storm to create demand that's unsustainable. So to give you for instance, just with some data that we just went over at the IATA meeting at the NBAA, 46 IATA brokers were polled and were asked, of the acquisition agreements that you executed in 2021 thus far, and the airplanes that you sold in 2021 thus far, whoever bought them, in both cases, how often were they first-time buyers? And the average of all the people that responded was about a third. And that's just unprecedented to have that many first-time buyers entering the fray. So in a nutshell, real quickly, what's happening is demand is very high. Supply is at an all-time low. I'm 27 years doing this, and I've never seen supply so low. So you have this situation where prices are going up, and they're going up right now at a rate that seems ridiculous because there's so much year-end driven activity that people want to get closings in prior to December 31st. So right now it's in hyperdrive, like they said in Spaceballs, it's gone to plaid. It's actually gone to a new level that this I think will calm down a little in January, but right now it's a real challenge to purchase a good quality pre-owned business jet of almost any variety.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so what forces are driving the demand to such a level? Well,
a lot of new buyers, a lot of new wealth, a stock market at 35,000 plus. Those people that don't want to ride on the airlines. The airlines are also, it's much harder to get there from here on the airlines. So therefore, anybody who said, well, I was always thinking about doing this. Well, now they're doing it.
Right.
And I think COVID is one of those things that's caused a lot of people to reflect on things that they have in their life or things that they don't have in their life. And we're in the throes right now of helping a client who is a fractional owner, always thought about his own airplane, and is about 70 years old and said, that's it, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And maybe it doesn't make perfect sense, but I want it. And we're going to travel the world in this airplane. So you have this very strong demand, very strong stock market, COVID pushing it all forward. It's a perfect set of circumstances to clean the market out, and that's what it's done.
Yeah, that's really incredible. And so are any business jet market segments left out from the current supply crunch?
Well, anything that was pretty low on the in the scope of demand prior to this acceleration, there's still some supply of, so for instance, 30 and 35-year-old airplanes, yes, there's some of those available. Some of the less popular models like a Citation 10 or something like that, where it's just got less demand, there's some of that available. But the most mainstream models that most people are after, just to pick a few that are just have very little supply, the Challenger 300, Challenger 350, Gulfstream 550, Gulfstream 450, both have just about no supply in them. Challenger 605, no supply. Falcon of almost any model has very, very little supply other than perhaps 50EX.
Yeah. So, I mean, has the market reached a peak? I mean, there's a certain point where prices just can't increase anymore, right?
Well, the market always acts in perfect fashion. It's driven by supply and demand and what the market will bear. And this is a stress test right now for things. And no one really has the answer to this. The buzz around NBAA all week last week was, well, how long will this last? Because everybody knows it's not going to last that long. Like eventually this changes. But nobody sees an event on the horizon that would change it. So we're starting to have inflation. We're starting to have talk about interest rates going up. But even if we had a little bit of that, we'd have to have some sort of big economic hiccup to really knock this out of bed. I think this is going to remain in place for some time.
Right. So, right. And what were the differences? I mean, obviously the conjuncture, the economy and the market and the fundamentals and everything was different back in 08 when the market reached its peak.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the market unraveled, I remember OEMs. I think the conditions were very different. I mean, like OEMs is a good example. Like OEMs, I think had really ramped up their production 07, 06, 07, 08, 09. And then when, problems arose, they were really left hanging. Whereas I think this time, although the market is very high, are you seeing a ramp up in production?
No, so this hit the used market first, and the used market acts in very rapid fashion. So in a matter of a few months, the used market is very scarce, and then people started turning towards ordering new. So we're seeing backlogs getting longer, but we're also seeing the OEMs stay very disciplined about not increasing production. So if we look at what's different between now and 2008, in 2006 and 7 and 8, one of the things that was really fueling the market going up so high was the international demand that existed in places where it didn't exist before for corporate jets. China, India, Russia, Brazil always had them, but it ramped up a lot in Brazil. And all of a sudden, airplanes were being sold into corners of the world that no one really ever heard of a corporate jet going to. They're not buying in this turn.
Right.
This is strictly driven by demand in the United States. And on top of that, there's no corporate buying. Corporate is not really using their airplanes. I wouldn't say they're shedding them in big numbers. Some corporate has shed in some fashion, but this is driven by high net worth individuals in the United States, which is a testament to how much wealth has been generated here in the last few years. So I think, once people come into the get used to flying in a corporate jet, it's very hard to go back on the airlines. A lot of these people are going to be here to stay, whether it's in the form of full ownership, fractional, charter, whatever it may be. When NetJets came on the scene in the 1980s,
Right.
there were people that said, this is going to destroy our industry in 27 different ways. There were people saying it was going to do that. And ultimately, what it did was the exact opposite. It introduced thousands of people to our industry that never would have been in it before. And I think we're having that sort of thing happen all over again.
Yeah, that's very the differentiation with the helicopter market is really interesting here, because in the heli market we're seeing international transactions. We're seeing aircraft selling outside of the U.S. and even outside of Europe, in Central Asia, South America, CIS, etc. And but that's a very interesting differentiation.
Now, is that Emmanuel? Is that in oil and gas, in utility configuration, or in VIP configuration?
Yeah, right. So I ran some numbers, and year-to-date sales. So year-to-date retail sales in the helicopter market, VIP, corporate, passenger configured 67% of retail sales year-to-date, and then utility 15%, EMS 10%, oil and gas 8%. So it's a considerable. The VIP segment is a considerable chunk of the retail sales year to date, and I mean historically it's always been about roughly about 50%, but it's definitely increased, and we saw sales volume of VIP twin going up 10% year over year, and supply is down, but yeah, that's very interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that affects if the helicopter VIP market trend follows the business jets in the quarters to come, and what effect that'll have on values. And I mean, I know you get involved in the helicopter market. I think exclusively VIP.
Yes.
How was your experience recently?
Well, we can tell a real world experience that happened not long ago. So we got a call from a client that was a longtime client of ours, corporate flight department, and they had a relatively late model S-76D, which was not being utilized, and they decided to dispose of it. And looking at all of the data prior to starting the project, it really didn't look very good. And I'm going to say this is approximately 6 or 7 months ago that we started on it. And after having the helicopter out there with what we thought was a very limited audience, we had one operator come at us fast and furious that wanted the helicopter in place for the summer season here in the New York area for the trips out to the Hamptons and Block Island and so forth and so on. And they couldn't buy it fast enough. And it was interesting that we had one buyer, and that one buyer came at us very fast and furious and wanted it right away, but I didn't have a second buyer. And that's about 6-7 months ago. And what it would be like now? Well, we're about to engage with a client to help them purchase one, probably a little bit of a lesser helicopter, and we'll see how hard it is to buy. I'm curious to see how difficult it will be to buy something like a C++ for this client.
Yeah, I mean the S-76 market is extremely regional.
Yes.
You have a pool of owners and operators in South Korea and Indonesia, a little bit in the UK, and then it's all east. I mean, it's mostly all East Coast US. So it's sort of it's in its own bubble. But I tell you, we have seen pricing in the C++ market come down quite substantially, and that has really spurred some demand year to date. Anyway, we've seen more C++'s trades year to date than probably the last 2 or 3 years combined. So it's been very encouraging for that for that market. Putting your International Aircraft Dealer Association hat on, I know you're no longer chairman, but you were chairman for a couple of years. How are you seeing the broker dealer role evolve in today's marketplace?
Well, in very general terms, the corporate jet market in the United States has existed for, let's say, plus minus 40 years, and it's maturing. It was the Wild West 30 and 40 years ago, even 20 years ago, and it's one of those things that's matured. And if you think about anyone who touches an aircraft, if they maintain it, if they insure it, if they paint it, if they fly it, if they manage it, insure it, you name it, they all have to be heavily, heavily regulated. But those that sell them or buy them require no regulation whatsoever. There's no barrier of entry. My neighbor could say tomorrow morning he's opening up an aircraft brokerage business and be in competition with me. And that's one of the things that IATA is trying to make known, is that approximately 7% of the world's aircraft brokers are doing somewhere around 50% of the transactions that take place in the mainstream turbine market. And that's only growing as we gain more momentum here. So IATA is truly trying to self-regulate's the wrong word, but to put the best foot forward to show what this organization is trying to do for the people in our industry, is to put this group on a pedestal and say, here's the best people that you can deal with for the reasons that they are vetted, pre-qualified, and certified. There's criteria that a member must attain to maintain their membership, which is number of units sold, bricks and mortar with an office, number of salespeople, all this. It has to be a real company, and so that's what we're really seeking to do, is put ourselves out there as the group to do business with.
But and I'm, if I can just be devil's advocate here, I mean, doesn't normal business practice or business dynamic apply? I mean, if someone's good and has integrity and is engaged, actually does what he says and does it with honesty, he'll get more business, and business begets business. I mean,
right.
Why do you need a government or a regulating body to ensure the quality of the broker or dealer?
Well, there is a code of ethics that gets subscribed to, that you sign your life away with.
Right.
But the other, to answer that question, let's just say there is the one or two person operation that they do know what they're doing and they're quite good at it. Yeah. But they transact, because of the limited amount of manpower, they transact 6 or 7 airplanes a year.
Right.
Are you not better off with a company that's got a staff of researchers and that transacts 35 airplanes a year, and therefore more opportunities come their way? There's more manpower, more professionalism, more checks and balances within our operation that make it a better case to use an aircraft broker that's got some scale. Doesn't mean you need to use the biggest one, just one that's big enough.
Right. Well, that's great. And I really urge everybody to go on the International Aircraft Dealer Association webpage. I forget what it is, but maybe you want to remind Joe. It's
yeah. Well, there's 2 places to look. Aircraftexchange.com, which is where IATA only brokers can list their aircraft for sale, and it's IADA.org would be our official website for the association.
Okay, great. And so just if I can keep you another few minutes, Joe. I remember seeing you many times on Corporate Jet Investor Town Hall, and you always speak extremely eloquently and with a lot of foresight about the market, and so give us your best analysis of what 2022 is going to look like.
I can't really speak for rotor wing nearly with as much authority as I could for fixed, but for fixed wing, 2022 will be a year that will look like a runaway market. I think it'll be a very, very, prices will go up, but the supply will remain light. And actually, brokers don't make their living on aircraft prices. They make their living on aircraft transactions. And there's going to be less transactions that are going to take place because there's just simply not enough supply. So it'll be an interesting year where we're going to see these probably prices go up and demand be strong, but the amount of transactions that actually take place will be lower.
Right. And I'm going to predict that the VIP segment of the helicopter market is going to follow. I think typically that segment trails behind the business jet market, by maybe 10 to 12 months. I think we're right there now on the cusp of values increasing in the VIP helicopter market. And I think we're going to see supply tightening in that segment. And the beauty about the helicopter market is that there's always correlation between configuration. So if you have one part of the market, completely, like the bottom falls out completely, like we saw in some of the medium, oil and gas medium twins in 2015 and 16, where values just, supply just shot up and values just fell. And there was a point, you couldn't even, I don't know, you can give away certain model medium twin engine helicopters or certain heavies. And I think, I think the VIP segment of the helicopter market, I think the values are going to go up, and I think that's going to help other segments of the market to improve.
Well, if it gives you any indication, when we placed that S-76D on the market, which has a limited audience, we began calling around to some of our associates to try and get the best feel we could get for what we thought, how we had called it right. And I will never forget, after we had told the client, we think it's going to trade for somewhere in between here and here, I called an industry associate and said, do you think that we can get X amount of dollars for this helicopter? And he said, not at gunpoint. It was his answer. Yeah. I said, well, that's not very encouraging. But long and the short of it is, several months later, we got it.
Yeah.
And that was in the early summer. That was probably in June.
Right. And I think, if you went to market today with a, well-positioned, full program, VIP, Sikorsky Cocoon, S-76D, you probably do okay. It's a soft market. There's less than a handful of deals, but it's a very small fleet as well. Mm-hmm. And I think you do well. Mm. Joe, it's been a real pleasure to speak with you. Really appreciate you attending the town hall.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So thank you everyone for attending today's town hall. And I will leave you with these famous words: good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. We look forward to see you next time. Thank you very much.